I'll I'll start right in on the presentation, but I won't spend too much time on the past stuff, so we can get right into some of the concepts we've developed for the quick wins, which is the most time critical piece of the project. Can everyone see maybe Alex, just say something because I can't see anybody. Say something if everybody
I
gets
can see you, but I
all
cannot see
right.
your screen share.
Oh, okay, let's try it again.
Mm-hmm.
Screen share, share. How about now?
Everything looks good, Jim.
Okay, let's get rolling. Yeah, so this study started last fall, as Alex said. Just give you a quick overview of what we're doing tonight. We're going to give you an overview of the project. We're going to give you a little planning context for the kind of the greater area and why we're doing what we're doing. We're going to talk about the public input we've received so far and selection, how we selected the sites that we're looking at now, and then dive into some of the sketches that we've developed. So that's what we want to spend most of the time on, and then we'll get some feedback from you all on that. So the challenge, as some of you may know who live and work downtown, is that we've had a drop in pedestrians, certainly during the pandemic, which is starting to come back. But we still seem to have persistent, some hotspots, if you will, of pedestrian crashes where people have been injured and in some cases even killed. We have a kind of broad vision for this project, and we have some multiple goals. So we want to improve both the safety and the experience of pedestrians to get more people downtown. We also want to work with existing plans. There's lots of other plans that the BID and NDOT and other agencies have, so we want to try to leverage those if possible, not compete with those. And then one thing unique about this study, even though it's called a study, it's got some implementation or some installation as part of the year-long study process that we want to try to get in this summer. I think everybody knows basically the area that we're working in. This is the BID boundaries. This is our rough schedule. Once again, we started in the fall working on identifying sites and coming up with designs in the spring, and then hopefully install in the summer. We all know that there's still a strong activity downtown, and it's a little more concentrated on the west end of downtown. We've taken a look at a lot of other things going on downtown, such as motor vehicle volumes. There's still a lot of cars downtown. We've got some major arterials that run through the downtown area. As we discussed earlier, we still have pedestrian crashes. In the 4-year stretch we looked at, we had about 570 reported crashes, and then 58 were injured or even killed. The other plans that are going on downtown, there's too many really to list here, but here are some of the key ones. The BID has a couple of plans that we tried to draw from, including the Parks Master Plan, which some of you may have been involved in, as well as the Gallery Place Chinatown Corridor study. Those both generated some ideas that we think we can kind of build on for our quick wins and beyond. And of course, there's also various bike and bus and long-term studies going on. Mentioned the Parks Plan in particular because it is a BID plan. Well, we pulled one of our ideas out of that, and the Chinatown plan, ideas for street improvements, safety improvements, placemaking improvements, if you will, as well on some of the downtown streets. Like I said, we're trying to keep track of all the other network and other mode improvements, such as the bike network and the bus network, to either help implement those or stay away from them as necessary. So what are we talking about? You're like, well, what? Let's get to the punchline here. What kind of improvements are we talking about? Well, I think a lot of them you've probably seen before. Sometimes we'll extend the curb at the intersections to try to make it a shorter crossing distance for pedestrian. That helps with safety. And as you can see here from this example in Bloomingdale, just north of downtown, they've also created some visually appealing curb extensions. Similarly, we may be looking at raised crosswalks. That could be more of a long-term improvement. Mid-block crossings, we've got a few of those downtown, and maybe there's an opportunity for more, where there's a strong demand to cross in the middle of the block. And more on the more aggressive side, we've potentially even turning some blocks or pieces of streets into pedestrian plazas, either short-term or long-term. As Alex said, we've been gathering input for a while now. We have had an advisory committee that's kind of overseeing this project with some downtown stakeholders. We've had a couple community, this will be the second community meeting. We've also had ANC meetings, or been to ANC meetings, I should say. We had a survey that looked at, asked a few questions of people. Some people filled it out online, and some people did it in person, where we went kind of roaming downtown with an iPad. And several questions, but two of the biggest questions were, what's your favorite street? Where do you feel most comfortable? And what is your least favorite street? So interestingly, sometimes the streets were on both answers to both questions, including the number one most comfortable and least comfortable street was 7th Street. So we actually have a couple projects on 7th Street to share with you. So the diagonal streets, of course, are a challenge, and you can see there that some of the streets that people gave us. This is some of the things that went into our site selection process. Why did we pick some of the sites we did? Well, we looked at the crashes, as we talked about earlier. We looked at the amount of activity. We looked at whether there was some inclusion of these intersections or locations in other plans. And we looked to see if there was conflicts with other plans. And then, of course, the public input we just discussed, and kind of more of a general idea of like, is this really feasible? This is a rough overview of the map we looked at. We had about 30 sites we started with based on looking at all that data, and we narrowed it down to 4 that we're going to show you tonight. This is 7 that another subset, and just to, you don't need to, this is very hard to read, obviously, but the point is we looked at about these 7 different locations from the perspective of safety and experience. In other words, is there a placemaking opportunity to make maybe we need more pedestrian space, maybe we need a visually appealing space, as well as trying to improve the safety. So it was kind of that was kind of the dynamic that we were looking at there. All right, so the first site I want to show you tonight is near Mount Vernon Square. 7th and K and Mass is a fairly high crash intersection for pedestrians. So we focused there, and we've also heard kind of a desire to be able to get to Mount Vernon Square, the Apple Store, the old Carnegie Library, in the middle of the block. You can't do that legally on either side of the square. So we've put in some long-term and short-term ideas for how to improve safety and improve access. The long-term is more ambitious. We even talked about making the streets one way on either side of the park. That might require a lot more analysis and input. But in the short term, we think we can extend some of the curbs on the corner, as well as maybe make a mid-block crossing if we have what's called refuge islands to make it safer. Right now, it's really not safe to cross 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, without some kind of a intervention. So that's one idea we had for those. So what I'm going to do is pause on each one of these, because I think we have time tonight, more time than we've had at other meetings, and get some initial reactions from folks, either in the chat, or Alex can call on you, I think unmute you if you raise your hand, to give us give us some input. We're looking for questions, problems, fatal flaws, tweaks. Do we have any input so far?
And I see hands raised. So I see that Mr. Karthik has had their hand raised. So I'm going to open it up and allow you to talk. Give me 1 second. Mr. Karthik?
Yes, excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to applaud, the fact that, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Yeah. I just kind of want to applaud the effort that you put in so far, and really want to encourage y'all to be ambitious. Like, there's every intersection in the CBD is dangerous and really could benefit from kind of this type of analysis. So kind of everything that you pick, just please go as big as you can. It would make a huge difference. I actually got, it's kind of funny. I actually got hit right here while I was both walking and biking at 7th and Mass. So it's like, yeah. So it's like, I'm really glad that y'all are starting with this.
All right, so we know which one you're going to vote for. Oh, I should mention that when we show you the 4, you'll have an opportunity at the end with a Zoom poll to vote on your favorite ones to where we should be focusing our attention. I'm looking at the Q&A here. It looks like the chat has been disabled, but the Q&A is working. So use the Q&A if you want. After the presentation, review the types of enhancements. Yeah, we can do that for sure if we have time at the end. And then I see one here. What methods do you use to slow traffic? There's a variety of methods to slow traffic. Interestingly, in the downtown area, because we've got so many signalized intersections, it's not that you don't get to see as much speed as you do in the outer wards or in the suburbs. But sometimes it could be, and the issue with the downtown and some of these larger streets is that the city does not like to see what we call vertical traffic calming. So speed bumps, for example, on a road like this would not really be an option. But things like the curb extensions, where it visually and physically narrows the street, that's where people feel the need to slow down. I mean, if you think of yourself driving on a street with nothing for, on either side of the street, you kind of go faster. If there's trees, if there's parked cars, if there's pedestrians and buildings, that tends to visually create a slower environment for traffic. But with the short downtown blocks and all the signalized intersections, the speeds are relatively slow, but still fast enough to cause potential harm. So the things we show here, you can see a couple of techniques are the island and then the curb extensions, for example. All right. Anything else at Mount Vernon Square?
We have 2 other hands raised. If you want to, Jim, I can open the floor up to Mr. Marks and Mr. Prince. I'm going to do Mr. Marks first. Mr. Marks, you still with us?
All right, I'm still with you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I just crossed this intersection about 5 minutes ago. I cross there quite often. I live at the Residence at Gallery Place at 7th and H, and we take our new dog over to Mount Vernon Square to the park there. It's a very, very dangerous intersection, and I'm glad that you listed this as first, because it's probably one of the most dangerous intersections for pedestrians and cyclists in the entire city. Why is that? It's because DDOT has directed motorists that are going westbound on New York Avenue. That is, if you're going from Union Station and you're headed to DuPont Circle, even further west, Sheridan Circle, and so on, you're directed to go up Massachusetts Avenue and turn right on 7th, then make your way into the northbound lanes of 7th, and then turn left again at New York Avenue, at Mount Vernon Place, and then head west for 1 block to 9th, and then, or 2 blocks, and then continue on Massachusetts Avenue. I'm sorry, so Massachusetts Avenue sort of circumvents this square, and it creates incredible hazards for pedestrians, not only pedestrians who are crossing north-south on the east side of the intersection of 7th and Mass, but also, and even more dangerous, are those crossing east-west from the northeast corner of 7th and Massachusetts to the other side of the intersection, Mount Vernon Square, going east-west on the north side. These include pedestrian, scooter, cyclists. It is extremely dangerous, extremely dangerous. And I think there should be put in some sort of traffic control mechanisms. You have, and also during the rush hour, you have a no left turn on red signals that are regularly ignored by motorists, and they're not enforced by the Metropolitan Police, making things even worse. My recommendation for this task force is to urge DDOT to send motorists up 6th Street to New York Avenue, so Massachusetts to 6th Street, turn right at the intersection of 6th and Mass, go up to the intersection of 6th and New York, then turn left, and then make their way, the motorists, through past the Convention Center and up Massachusetts Avenue again. 6th Street is a much less used street than 7th. It's more pedestrian friendly, etc. This should be your top priority. It is extremely dangerous. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you.
Mr. Prince, I'm gonna allow you to talk. Mr. Prince, are you there with us still?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, super. Thank you. I agree with Mr. Marks. This is a really dangerous and important intersection. I just rode my bike through there earlier today, coming down the 9th Street cycle track and then moving over to the K Street eastbound cycle track. On the schematic here, you've got item C there, proposed or protected bike facilities. I think what I would be looking for as a cyclist who lives in the neighborhood is a good connection from the K Street, the 2 protected bike lanes, which are, on the north and south sides of K Street running east from 7th, that a connection sort of somehow across through the square, maybe not through the square, but on either side, with an eye towards connecting, hopefully in the future, to the K Street Transitway, although there is a gap foreseen in that plan, because it's not projected to extend beyond maybe 13th or so, with protected bike lane through the middle. But I hope that eventually it will be connected. So what you've got here is, if you were on the K Street cycle track, say coming on the north side there past CVS, where would you cross the street to go either along the south side of the square on K Street, or if, going north is difficult. I've done it both sides. And neither side is very comfortable to do. You would take the pedestrian sidewalk, and then if you go west on K, you're in traffic. I almost got doored there once. Anyway, I'd just like to see a smoother transition with some kind of protected or indicated crossing to link the K Street protected bike lanes sort of around and then through to the other side on K, or certainly they will connect to 9th Street cycle track. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of a gap. If the new transitway has bike lanes and we have bike lanes to the east, how do you get around the square? Maybe something, even this is a pedestrian study, but maybe something we're doing, like I'm even seeing some of these curb extensions could maybe accommodate that interesting movement. We don't have a signal at 7th and K on the east side, but anyway, you've given us something to think about. So appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Maybe I'll just kind of hop in and add here too, like the kind of where I remember why I got hit on 7th and Mass both times, where there was, I think it was, so southbound traffic, they have a green And when there's often total logjam. So like a pedestrian or a bicyclist can make it through, but drivers can't, because there's such congestion. So they'll often miss. So they'll often think, hey, because there's a green, they can turn left. But they're not looking for bicyclists or cyclists, bicyclists or pedestrians. So I think, I'm not sure, it's been a while since I've actually looked at the signal phasing and timing, but actually having I think it's called a protected left and the accompanying red left arrow, I think would go a long way on southbound on 7th Street, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Howard Marks here. Could I just make one more point? And that is, I've been to some cities where they actually cycle the signals so that there's a period of time where only pedestrians can enter the intersection. No traffic, no motorized vehicles, no trucks, buses, whatever.
Yeah.
I can't say exactly what cities they were. I think it's something in your industry would know about. I think that could be a quick fix.
It's actually in DC. There's one actually at 7th and H. It's called a barn stands. So we should definitely have one there as well. I totally agree.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
All right. Anybody else on this one? I think we're good on time. We've got 4 and we're at 6:30, so should we move to the next one? We can
Yes,
always
go
come
ahead.
back.
Mhm.
All right, the next one is a convergence of a few different ideas. The yet to be released Chinatown Parks Master Plan for downtown DC calls for some improvements and expansion even of Chinatown Park, and we also have need for traffic calming and pedestrian improvements at 6th and I. So we kind of put those together to create the curb extensions at 6th and I, as well as 5th and I, and potentially we have a short-term plan and a long-term plan. That the long-term plan at the top basically limits traffic on that block between 5th and 6th. It could be for local traffic only, but no driving or parking for non-residents on that block. And it would be kind of a plaza and virtual extension of the park. On the bottom, in the short term, we're talking about keeping it open to cars, but possibly making it only one way. And it's a 50-foot wide street. It's pretty wide. So we could have the top 20 feet or so be for this park expansion idea, and then the bottom would still be a parking for the businesses and residents. I think it's more of a residents and institutions there on the south side of the I Street block. So that's the idea there. We probably would keep open that tiny block as well, but in the long term, that could be closed. So the big changes here are the kind of park expansion with, it could be anything from like what they call a traffic garden, where you would have kids could walk and bike and have a little pattern, or it could be play equipment. It could be just street furniture, tables with checkers or that kind of thing. Kind of expansion of park activity into the street. You could even close it for events that extend from the park into the street. So this gets at that placemaking goal, that experience goal of the study as well. We would keep, the same amount of lanes on 6th Street and the approaching on the west of I Street there, but tighten up the corners to the extent that we can to make it easier. And this is, there was an attempt at this a long time ago on the corner where the synagogue is, but that is kind of disappeared. But it would be the same idea, but on all 4 corners, plus the placemaking on I Street. Anybody have any thoughts or comments on this one?
I love this, just like the other one. I mean, these are great ideas. One thing that I just wanted to make sure, when you guys are, so if something like this were to go forward, I know quite a few of these intersections don't comply with the district sightline laws. So like there's parking right up against the crosswalk, and that causes significant kind of significant issues. And I think there's like a pretty cool opportunity to kind of do two things at once with, hardened daylight infrastructure with scooter and bike corrals, to replace those kind of last parking spots that really decrease the driver visibility. And I just, I was thinking maybe that's one thing that we can kind of say, standardize, if we're working on this, like maybe that's just like a good thing to have. Because I'm the chair of the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council, and scooters is something that comes up all the time, especially in the CBD. And the more that we can do to get scooters off the sidewalk, both in operation and when they're just parked, the better. And the more scooter corrals we have that are easily accessible would just kind of serve that goal pretty well.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to do here. There is signage, no parking signage, but you're right. That it doesn't always get followed, and so these curb extensions would reinforce that, so people couldn't park. There's on the synagogue side of the street on I Street, there is a existing corral for bikes, and scooters. We could expand that to both corners, or we could make art and scooter parking and bike parking all on all four corners. But yeah, the daylighting is the idea here for sure, and the extent that we can provide more scooter parking for sure. And while I have everyone here, or all of you here, one of the changes here would be if we do the park expansion idea, would be that the zip car parking spaces would have to be removed or relocated. And we've started to identify some nearby locations, such as that short block there, where we could get some zip car spaces in. But I just wanted to get some feedback from you all on that. And because it is a neighborhood resource or amenity, and we want to make sure that they're accounted for.
I think regarding the Zipcar and other services like that, I think this is Howard Marks here again. I think the introduction of the shared ride services, Uber and Lyft and others, have pretty much changed that market. Boy, I used to rent zip cars quite a lot, especially going out on the metro system. I haven't done it for years. I just don't know how these companies are doing it anymore, given the competition. I just don't think it's quite the issue it was, say, in 2015 or 2016. That's just my thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's not. We've talked to the DDOT coordinator on this, and we'll talk to Zipcar too. It's not clear how busy these cars are and how many spaces they need, but we'll just want to run that by you while we had you on the line.
I'll second that too.
Okay.
That's the same. We've had the same experience, and I think some of the Zipcar. I live in Southwest, and some of those Zipcar spots have actually gone away. So yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. In your comments, does anyone have any comments on the park aspect of it, and the kind of the placemaking for using some of the street for additional park activities?
If I could jump in again, Dale Prince here. I like the idea of the plaza there between 5th and 6th. It might drive a little bit more traffic down to H Street, which wouldn't terribly be a bad thing. There was a problem, which I believe has been resolved, with some people using the park sort of inappropriately, or taken up, along the curbside there. I think it might require possibly a solution like that in the future if it occurred again. Things are good now. I like the idea of a little expanded bit there, which I'm trying to visualize what that is now. And is that where the bike share is?
Yeah, so it's a pretty wide area. It's got bike share up against the tiny island, and then the rest is like 40 feet of of pavement. And, well, there's parking, but that could be in the long run. There would be very few parking spaces lost, and it's not, RPP. It's not metered. It's simply, I think, just 2-hour parking for about 4 cars on that short little block. So the parks plan, it's a little awkward because the parks plan is not public yet, but I think a lot of people have seen it. But the parks plan is similar to what's on the top here, which calls for incorporating all that space into some kind of park experience.
Right. And there's this would not remove the bike share, of course. Right?
No, we would want bike
Yeah.
share. Full disclosure, very near and dear to my heart. We would want to keep that there or very nearby somehow. I think we have room for bike share and other things there. And and then once again, we got to think about the short and the long term. I would be, we have to work with DDOT and other stakeholders. I'm less excited about closing that tiny block in the short term completely, because it does provide access to Mass. And then if they don't have that, they have to go up Fifth and make that right, which I think is fine in the long term. The parks plan, since we have time and a small crowd, the parks plan calls for making that the bigger block of I Street one-way westbound, so you don't have that problem of the weird turn. But we thought, I thought that might
I'm
be
familiar with that
difficult.
because I live at 3rd and Mass, which is de facto 3rd and H, and sometimes take I Street east and then make the left on 5th and go over on I to 4th or to 3rd and come down. And I know that's a weird turn, but it can avoid H Street, which is busier, and so forth. I don't know how many people do that, but there is that sort of weirdness where it gets to Mass Ave.
All right, we'll look at the operations there a little more closely. The key with the quick wins, if they're going to be quick, is not do too much dramatic change that requires more analysis and more approvals. But you can kind of see the intent of the design in both renderings.
Yeah, Howard Marks here. Just an idea of the Chinese character, Chinese art, permanent art in the park. There's no way you would know that it's tied into Chinatown. I don't even think there's a sign there that says Chinatown Park. If it is, I've never seen it. And working with the Mayor's Office of Asian and Pacific Affairs and so on, is to maybe even have a contest to put in some permanent Chinese, Oriental, Asian art in the park to give it that Chinese character. Just like we here that live in Chinatown, the businesses are required, even the residences, to put in Chinese. All our signs have to be bilingual in Chinatown, as you probably know. So, that's something for you guys to explore, guys and gals, putting in Chinese art into the park. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We have on that block, I just noticed the Chinese Benevolence Association as a stakeholder, and we've also gotten a few other leads on Chinatown contacts, and especially since we lost the characters at 7th and H and the crosswalks there, I think this would be a great opportunity for that. So, point well taken.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comments on this one?
I just wanted to kind of clap on the traffic circle idea, traffic garden idea. This is like, I've always wondered why DC doesn't have more of these. It's just like such a great way to get parents and kids down to a certain place. And like, if you want to get more of that into downtown, like that is a phenomenal way to do it. Great.
All right. It's a little tight, but I'd like to see if we can make something where it came up early in our meetings to try and one somewhere. And I thought, well, that's a crazy idea. We'll never have enough space, but this might provide enough space rather than being in a parking lot somewhere far away. And this is kind of the connection between, as you all know, kind of the residential neighborhood, more residential neighborhood to the north and Chinatown to the south. And it could be kind of a real meeting place for families, kids. And we have traffic garden while promoting traffic safety with improvements. All right, I'm a little carried away. Let's go to the next one. We have 7th and G, or potentially 7th from F to H, or some subset thereof. There's a few things going on here. It is a high crash area. It's also been identified by the Vision Zero team at DDOT. They did a sketch for 7th and G a few years ago. It's also this corridor is the middle of the proposed busway improvements that the DDOT's bus priority corridor that DDOT's looking at. So at first we were kind of steering away from 7th, but then after talking to them, they said, well, if we stay with the pedestrian improvements on the edges, we might be able to, leave space for the busway as they continue that design and planning and design process with the community. So really what it is, to cut to the chase with this group, it's kind of an enhancement of what we have going on there now. Many years ago, there was a kind of a painted curb extension and some planters put in. It's not very visible. It's not very long or big. And we think we could enhance it with additional marking, art, potentially, probably some longer zones especially where we've got a lot of pedestrians, like right near the metro entrance. We could even add, in addition to planters, we could look at different planters or temporary trees or something to help with the placemaking. Some of the keys will be, working with the stakeholders here, including, MPD, the arena owners, obviously Howard's group that in the condos nearby, to make sure that it makes it, safer, better experience, and kind of, all meet multiple goals here for this already congested. This is the downtown of downtown. Some of you have probably been to Times Square, where they've done similar interventions with paint in the street and additional amenities. We don't have as much space maybe as they do in New York, but we have, I think, a little more space than we're taking up now to make this easier to cross and a more inviting environment.
I could chime. Thanks for mentioning our role. The residents at Gallery Place has 192 units. We have 300 residents. On the map there, you'll see Gallery Place Way. We call it the G Street Alley. The city chooses to call it Gallery Place Way, which no one uses, by the way. But the G Street Alley, and just above that is our building. So I think the main two issues. One, crossing 7th Street on the north side of G, and with cars turning left from eastbound G onto northbound 7th. Very problematic. Cars come racing around that corner, going very fast often, and creates a real danger for pedestrians. And I think the bulb outs that you mentioned, maybe even a little island, which I think you discussed earlier, could help. I don't think there's an issue on the south side of that intersection. People don't usually cross that there for a number of reasons, but it's a north side, where a little bit of an island could help, the bulb outs, etc. That's number one. Number two, I think you mentioned art. In front of what is described on the map here as Gallery Place Way, which we call the G Street Alley, would be very appropriate for art, statues, or really nice, having, even I recommended to the people from the Capital One Arena, Monumental Sports Entertainment, as they do in Chicago, to put up statues of retired Wizards and Capitals players, even from the Georgetown Hoyas, men's basketball, which plays there. That would be very appropriate. That would be a real plus for the city to do that in conjunction with Monumental Sports and Entertainment. That's where the G Street Alley, or Gallery Place Way, does a T intersection with the sidewalk. Yeah, that would be very helpful. Unfortunately, the movie theater, which was a great source of traffic, has announced it's closing this month. Very sad.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much, but we do have a problem there with buskers, frankly, to who play with the noise coming from there far exceeds the city limits, city code. That's a different story, but definitely statues there would help. Thank you.
And Howard, just to put a finer point on it, would the statues be in the alley in the G Street alley, or would be they more closer to 7th Street in the street or something like that?
On the sidewalk, actually.
Sidewalk. Okay.
So just to the left of where you see the G for Gallery Place
Right.
Way, there is a sign that I don't know who the sign belongs to, whether it's the I don't know who it belongs to actually. It's a very huge electric sign, and the buskers usually hang out right in front of that sign. So yeah, so it would be on the sidewalk.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
There's some questions in the chat, Jim. There's one from Mr. Richard Sterba. He was asking how many parking spaces were moved out of total on block. That I believe that was his question.
That's a good question. We have not tallied that. I think there's probably about, well, and it depends on how you define parking spaces. On the part closer to the metro entrance, I believe that is either authorized vehicles or, honestly, I can't remember, but there'd probably be 3 or 4 there. I think we've already, Howard would know better, we've already eliminated parking at where this letter C is here, right at the corner of G. Then there's some bike parking there. So, you know, it's scalable, I guess, is the short answer. We could vary depending on like community impact. I don't think you get money residents or even, you know, patrons parking here. I could be wrong. Oh yeah, I think I'm missing a whole bunch of these Q&A chats here. Let's see.
And you've answered a good portion of
Okay.
them. We got a chance to.
The planters, yeah, the planters have been pushed. I agree. I think in the short term, I think the bid is working on getting the planters at least back where they were, and then
Yeah,
the future.
I answered in the chat.
Okay, yeah. Restricting parking 7 to buses only. Okay, there is a DDOT concurrent study going on for buses on 7th, and that's they presented at the ANC last month along with this project, and you would need to get onto their website to learn more about what their latest thinking is on the busway. But the busway planning is alive, and we're trying to see if we can make it work with.
I'd be happy to share
pedestrian
the
improvements.
link in the chat with individuals that are interested in the
Yeah.
7th Street Bus Priority Project.
Yeah,
I can share
the
that.
bid is helping an outreach on that too.
So just
Okay.
to follow up on this busway project, of course, this is a rehashing of a previous project that had been vigorously opposed by the community. Administrator Lott or DDOT Secretary Lott withdrew the plan. It's back, as you mentioned, it's in play again. Once again, our community is vigorously opposed to it. We have sent our council member Brooke Pinto has approached Director Lott around this, and he responded that he's going to look into this. He's very familiar with why there was such opposition to this project. I don't want to divert from what you guys are doing, guys and gals. This is just another issue, but I know there's interest in the community, especially the parking spaces being removed. There is north of 7th and G, between 7th and G, and actually 7th and New York Avenue or Massachusetts, which is this study area for the busway. There'll be a loss of many spaces, and it's causing a lot of opposition, not only by residents, but also by businesses and by especially the restaurant industry. There's no alleys, as you could see from this map here. There's no way you could deliver any product to any any of these stores or residences along 7th Street without having on-street parking. So this is a huge issue. I don't want to take more time. It's not your issue, it's our issue. I just wanted to fill the community in. Thank you.
And Mr. Marks, just real quickly, I have I see your email. I don't mind talking offline about it. As Jim had stated, the Downtown DC bid is working with DDOT in order to get community feedback and trying to find middle ground, because they are essentially in the structuring phase where they're looking for different alternatives. And I would be happy to pick your brain and get some understanding of what are some possibilities and what it could look like. So we can speak after the meeting.
Just send me an email. I'll be very happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marks.
So I want to jump in here. So at the MAC, the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council, the kind of the mayoral council for folks with disabilities, this intersection, both 7th and G and 7th and H have come up kind of as kind of real frustrations because those bus stops are very often blocked by either metro vehicles or random vehicles. And when those buses can't pull up to the curb, they cannot, people with in wheelchairs cannot get on the bus. And 7th and G and 7th and H are both kind of very heavily used bus stops on the 70 and 79 routes, which are the most heavily used bus stops, bus routes in the entire metro bus system. So that that's one, I don't know if it's like a planner thing or just like some enforcement thing, but like that's come up a bunch of times in the MAC where like we've had wheelchair riders not even be able to get on the bus because of, you know, these random cars that are parked and blocking a bus stop. So I don't know, I just wanted to kind of put that out there. Like that stretch is like oftentimes like a real choke point for the 70 and 79, and especially for folks with disabilities who are twice as likely to not own a car. It's a really important way to kind of keep clear for buses.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and they brought that up at the DDOT brought that up at the last meeting with ANC, and they showed the dynamic of people trying to get through parked cars to get to the bus door. One idea that we could incorporate here would be what's called like a bus bulb out, or like a an extended platform where they couldn't park there because there'd be some kind of a bus pad or bus loading area between the trees, for example, here. And you could do that even with temporary materials. There's one over on 13th Street now. There's one on K near Franklin Park. That would be an idea where you'd basically prevent, because those we talked about those parking spots a minute ago. You know, regardless of what the sign says, it's kind of a free for all, and people like to use them, whether it's like police, metro, anybody besides buses getting to the curb. So that might be a possible solution. I don't know if you've thought about that.
Listen, I want to disagree with Mr. Karthik's assertion that somehow cars are blocking handicapped people in wheelchairs or people on crutches from reaching the buses. That's not true. I live right above the bus stop here. I'm looking out the window right now as I'm speaking. It's the scooters actually who are thrown onto the sidewalk by users. Companies don't come and pick them up. That's what's actually causing the problem at the southeast corner of 7th and H, not cars. I hate to disagree with you. I just live here 24/7. So I'd be very happy to discuss that with you.
Yeah, I don't dispute that scooters are getting scooters off the sidewalk, both from operating and off the road as well, like just being discarded that is something that we definitely need to deal with, and that is a problem. I take the 70-79 to get to work every day, and I've seen it myself. where kind of folks with disabilities are, and this is actually, people have brought this up into our council, like where they've actually physically been obstructed from getting onto a bus because of an obstruction. Scooters have been brought up, and also cars.
Okay, and just to put a fine point on it, the one we're looking at here is 7th and G. Probably the same problem at 7th and H, but
Yeah.
I mean 7th and F. I'm sorry, 7th and F is the stop. That's probably more impacted.
One thing to also bring up, G, so that stretch between G, on G between 6th and 7th, and maybe even, I'm sorry, kind of 8th and 7th, 7th and 9th, like that is like a very overbuilt road. And it is just like kind of begging, because you've got the MLK library on one side, sandwiched between both, like, you know, anchor metro stations, like every single metro line serving like that stretch, like that. You can make the case for that being kind of the best served stretch of road by public by public transit in the entire city. And this is like kind of begging, you know, I know in the short term you can't, like, there's kind of very little that you can do substantively, but in the long term it would be cool to see a vision for that to be kind of pedestrianized, kind of walkwayized, or, you know, plazaized, whatever it is. This is like, because we've got the portrait gallery there too, like there's just, you know, this is one of those places that's like really just begging to be pedestrianized.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I think we looked at that, and also the two studies I mentioned, the Parks Master Plan and the Bids Gallery Place Plan, have ideas similar to that for streets like FG 8 and a few others. So there's hope, I think, in the long run to see that kind of placemaking if we don't get to it with this project. All right, we got one more, 1.5 basically, but we got one more down here at Indiana, Penn, and 7th. Also need to worry about the busway project, but the idea here is it's a very popular metro station, very popular tourist area, lots of pedestrians, not a lot of space for pedestrians, particularly on the west side of 7th, not like clear sight lines or walk lines to the metro station itself. So the idea here would be, in the long term, you know, move curbs and make it more pedestrian friendly and easier to cross, as well as potentially make some kind of a plaza of a shared street on Indiana Avenue, where you limit the car traffic and have more pedestrians, space for events and things like that. That's kind of the long-term vision. And then the short term is similar to that, with temporary materials, maybe not the closure of Indiana Avenue, but the expansion of pedestrian space and crosswalks to make it a little more inviting. And I should also mention that, you know, 7th and Penn is one of the higher crash intersections, including a couple fatalities. And I should also mention that there's a larger study that National Capital Planning Commission has going on Pennsylvania Avenue, which may preclude some of these more permanent changes that we have, but as they work through their process, but the short term might be possible.
Yeah, if I could, Howard Marks here. I'm a cyclist, and I use the cycling lanes on Pedestrian, on Pennsylvania Avenue, which are seen in the lower part of the picture, not the map, but the picture. If there was a way that you could design in a exit that would go around the Navy Memorial onto 8th Street. 8th Street is a great street for cycling. Hardly anyone uses it. Right. You know, and to get up to F Street, I'm saying get up to G Street, actually. Yeah, G Street. That would be great. I mean, if there was way just to make it, you know, through signage or through even painting a bike lane on the sidewalk around the Navy Memorial. That would be terrific. Thank you.
All right. I can't remember, are there stairs between the memorial and the TISM? I can't remember.
There is
a good
not.
question. Okay.
There are no stairs, no.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, we can look at that. It might be a little out of our scope, but I can't help but take a closer look at that. I agree.
I'll agree. That's a great idea. I mean, 8th Street is underutilized, and it's like it would be great to activate.
Any other thoughts on Indiana 7th?
Yeah, Dale Prince here. I may have missed it, but Indiana is shown in brown. See that on the key. What does that indicate?
Yeah, so that would be in the long term, which is, I should have mentioned, like we have the photo, then we have the long term, then we have the short term on all these. So the long term would be either closing it completely to cars or raising it up so that it's, you know, with special pavers, so it's maybe less inviting for cars. And you could close it. There's some driveways and drop-offs in the garage just a little bit off to the east here, but you could leave it open on the east end and close it down here to, if you wanted to make sure that there's vehicle access for those businesses and residents. But that would be the long-term option to make it more of a plaza. You know, the idea with this placemaking is, you know, we've got other neighborhoods and developing neighborhoods like Union Market or like the Wharf, where they're developing these shared streets or more pedestrian plazas, and how can we compete in the downtown bid with some of those up and coming neighborhoods that have those kind of amenities.
Yeah, gotcha. I imagine that for through traffic, it's probably a low volume. I don't even think I've ever driven that stretch. And yeah, at the other end, at the east end, maybe it's tougher for businesses, and a plaza might help them. I'm thinking of that, was it Au Bon Pain that closed a couple of years ago up at the corner of 6th? Anyway, plaza sounds good, maybe with just, you know, a lane allowing deliveries and local folks.
Yeah, we did have it all the way extended to 5th, but we decided to drop that idea because of all the.
I'm sorry, I meant
yeah,
6th.
it was 6th. We had it between 6th and 5th too, but dropped that because of all the parking for the courts and the police and not as many businesses to pump up there.
I was going to say with the courts, I don't know if the courts are back in session again. Of course, they're in session if they moved on to in-person courtroom activity versus on Zoom and so on. But when and if they do return to the courtrooms, that might change the picture regarding Indiana Avenue use. Just want to throw that out.
Okay, good to know.
I can chime in there because I was called for jury yesterday. I didn't have to go, but that would have been in person. So I think they've never stopped. A member of my family was a juror several months ago, even during COVID, in person.
Thank you.
I think actually, so, I mean, this is all music, like this is fantastic stuff. On the point of Indiana Ave, like, you know, I think there's quite a bit of diagonal parking on Indiana Ave past 6th, I think. And yes. Yeah, it's always, you know, I remember actually there's a crosswalk that has the same daylighting problem. And it's just like, this is an overbuilt street, and there's cars that are parked right here. And it's like heartbreaking because it's ridiculously well served by public transit. There is a stop, like there, you know, Judiciary Square is right there, you know, like so for folks to use, and I think, you know, the more that's like an opportunity for mode shift if we can, like, you know, get like people to start using the metro to, you know, access that. Yeah, everything that you said about Indiana and the kind of long term, totally agree. Want to flag, and probably notice, like, I think there's a real opportunity for the Navy Memorial site to be activated as a park. It's just generally like, you know, there are other parks that are much more vibrant, and I don't know what the answer is, but like there's a way that like that can be special, then it's just not. The other thing I wanted to flag here is that, so the 7th and Penn area is, 7th and Penn is both the terminus, well, it's the terminus southbound and the origin northbound for both the 70 and 79 buses. And they, you know, there are a lot of, there's a, you know, across the street, I think it's the P6, which is also pretty heavily used route on Penn. So like that transfer is one that is kind of painful, but a lot of people make the transfer right there. So just FYI, like this is kind of a transit hub, like I mean, the pieces are there to make it a transit hub. It's not pedestrianized. It's not, you know, designed in a way to make it inviting as a pedestrian hub, or I'm sorry, a transfer hub and a transit hub. But it functionally acts as one, but it could be a lot better.
So they're on the bus on Pennsylvania getting dropped off, and then they're walking over to the east side of 7th, for example.
Exactly. So, and actually either way, so I mean, they could be getting on or off at 7th and Penn, and then walking across the street to Penn, or getting going the other way on Penn too. So,
all right. Any other comments on this one?
I think this was the site where the two people were killed, right, by the tour bus operator.
Yeah, Valentine's Day many years ago.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons it pops up, and there's been others as well. I don't know about other fatalities, but other crashes, but pedestrian crashes here. All right, how are we doing on time? 7:08, pretty good. I don't know, Alex, what do you think? Should we show them Vermont, or should we just go right to the poll?
Yeah, I say show them Vermont.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll have maybe about 10 minutes after that.
All right. So this is another one, west end of town, that's a little less of a priority now, but the idea here is to eliminate some of the confusion at Vermont, where it hits 14th and Thomas Circle. So in the long term, the idea would be maybe even to seal this off to vehicles or limit it in some way. And it makes the pedestrian crossings a little more legible. And then have that be similar to what we talked about in Indiana, have that be a plaza for eating, activities, events, whatever the case may be. And we could do a similar thing in the short term, either eliminating the cars, or slowing the cars as they come on to Vermont. There's other ways that you can get to Vermont. You can get to Vermont from L, so the garages and businesses and alleys and drop-offs could still happen, but you wouldn't have this kind of cut through from Thomas Circle down to the White House. It would be more limited traffic here. It also could include some enhancements to Thomas Circle as well, if we can get Park Service cooperation. And we don't want to reconfigure Thomas Circle again, but we could certainly enhance access. And you could do the same thing on the northeast side of Thomas Circle if you wanted to, and it would probably actually improve traffic for certain numbers of vehicles on this area, so maybe one less movement to have to worry about coming in and out of Vermont Avenue. But it would require a good bit of analysis to figure out the cars that were currently on Vermont, are they going to go on 14th? Are they going to go on M? And we'd have to do a little more work than there. And then the other negative, if we're creating this space, who's going to program it? Who's going to maintain it? Is there enough activity here to warrant closure for pedestrians?
I put it in the chat. I think this is another great design, another great idea. Like, I think that I wouldn't, there's a lot of places where, you know, once you close it and kind of once people start to, you know, a lot of European cities and a lot of South American cities also, like once you close it, like you don't need to program, like program will happen. Like, you know, people will start to see, wow, this is a cool amenity. It's a great amenity, and we can kind of do neat things here. And I think that'll start to happen.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, not to get too academic, but the European ones have been quite successful, and some of the American ones have been successful. It's usually when you have pedestrians and you create space for them, they fill it up. If you don't have any pedestrians and you close it to vehicles, like in the Midwest, this has happened in a few. Then it creates you take a struggling downtown and makes it struggling even more. But I don't think we're here in that case. Here we have lots of residents. We have lots of pedestrians. Oh, another factor to throw in is that, especially as we get close to Mass Ave here on all these sites, and we have this kind of changing dynamic downtown, there's a lot of residential conversions. And the bid knows better than I do how many and where they are, but there's a lot of residential conversions coming in to take advantage of the drop in office demand, and who then those would be residents who would be, you know, interested, looking for more open space and green space when they move in. Okay, so any more comments on the Vermont idea?
I have just a question for the record. How do you handle emergency vehicles when you close off a street? I see
Sure.
there. Yeah, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so these curbs you could have in the long run, you could have these mountable curbs where, like, a 45-degree angle curb where, you know, honestly cars could come up, but also certainly emergency vehicles would go over it. And you could do the same thing in the short term. If we had flex posts, emergency vehicles, we could just run them over. So that would definitely be accounted for. And the other thing we want to account for is kind of trucks. If we create this little cul-de-sac here, we want to make sure delivery trucks can use it, and maybe they would also need to use that mountable curb. But I think you see this, as Kartik was alluding to, in these kind of European plazas where, you know, they have pavers, they have, you know, maybe a curb of some sort, but cars don't go in it, but delivery trucks do, or they go in it at certain times a day for deliveries. And certainly emergency vehicles would just, you know, roll right over.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So we're gonna try now to do how many, we still have about a dozen people. How many people have, like 10 or 11 people? We're gonna try to do a little Zoom poll. If we can, do I need to release?
Want to bring up the poll
pause
right
share?
now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I'm launching the poll. This is essentially, out of all of these sites that you witnessed today and Jim described, which are the ones stand out to you the most. So feel free to cast your vote here, and we'll give that about 3-4 minutes. It's only 8 folks, so it won't take that long. So it looks like 6 out of the 8 folks on the call participated. We're gonna give it just another 30 seconds or so for those other 2 to participate if they want to. If not, we're gonna close the poll because it seems like all of we've got all the answers that we are going to receive. All right, with that said, it looks like the Mount Vernon Square quick win site is the more preferable at 67%, which is perfectly fine. But for the most part, we just want to get an understanding from the attendees on the call today, which of these stand out to you all the most and could be of benefit to the downtown DC area. So I really appreciate you guys participating in the poll. So I'm going to close it up. Last two folks, sorry that you weren't able to get in on it.
What was number two? What was the
Oh,
second
number
one?
two was at 43%, 7th Street, Indiana to Penn.
Okay, interesting.
And
All right.
then the Capital One Arena came in third at 29%. And then finally, Chinatown Park, 14%. And Jim, I can share these. I believe I'll be able to share these results with you.
We'll just say it's a small sample size.
Yes.
This was a great, it was a small meeting, but it was great to have this more intimate, candid discussion, make sure everybody had a chance to chime in versus the 12 minutes we had at the ANC meeting and when we had 30 people at the first meeting. So thank you all for hanging in there. It's good.
So just to reiterate what Jim said, thank you all for taking the time to speak with us today. Two things I'm going to do really quickly. In the chat, I'm going to drop my telephone number and my email in the event that there are any questions or concerns regarding the downtown pedestrian safety project. I am once again Alex Davis. I am the associate planner for the downtown DC bid. And as I said, I will have my information in the chat. It's available now. All right. And there goes my email. All right. And then my cell phone, if you wish to have my information as well. 202. All right. And then finally, I have the link from the 7th Street project. So if you all need any additional information on the 7th Street bus priority project, it is going to be in the chat. Feel free to take a look and get a general understanding of what's going on with that specific project. So right. So we are all set. Thank you all again. Make sure you are taking down my information and click on that link for the bus priority project just to get a better understanding of what DDOT is looking to do for the 7th Street bus priority project. So thank you all so much, and you all have a wonderful rest of your night. Take care.